I've had hundreds of people come up to me, and I predict it's thousands in my area who are sitting at home waiting for these mandates to be thrown out.
Hi, I'm Evelyn Ray. Welcome to the New South Wales One Nation TV. Today I am joined with the candidate for Cowper, New South Wales, Faye Aspiotis. And I just want to welcome you here today, Faye, and I'm really excited to get into the nitty-gritties of politics, why you joined, what made you choose One Nation, and things that you're passionate about. So thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Evelyn.
Now, you haven't always been a politician, which is something I say at the beginning of every single interview with One Nation candidates. You haven't always been a politician, which is actually a really good thing coming into 2022. So I'd love to hear a bit about who you actually are before we get into politics. People want to know who the woman is behind the candidate seat. So yeah, if you could go into what led you to this moment, I'd really appreciate it.
Well, I guess the last few years have been pretty rough on everyone. But, you know, especially myself, I was a permanent school teacher, very happy doing my job, teaching maths. Before then, I taught some science and some engineering studies. And then along came the mandates. So suddenly I was told if I didn't get a medical procedure, I could no longer teach. And, you know, this decision about that medical procedure, you know, there was a few reasons why it wasn't right for me and my family, you know, some of them based on religious reasons, you know, and also some just with the concerns that I had about the safety of that medical procedure. Yeah, so I guess I made the decision not to be bullied into getting something that I didn't want to get. So I, you know, was facing the prospect of losing my job, my permanent job. And then I saw the call out from Pauline where she's put it out there and said, you know, I'm looking for people with integrity, honesty, who are willing to stand up for, you know, everyday Australians and run at the next federal election. So I just really quickly applied. It was very spontaneous. I didn't even talk to my husband about it. I just did it. And yeah, it was very strange. It felt a little bit spiritual that I just thought, okay, I need to do this. This is something that I can do to stand up. Yeah, and then next thing I knew, I was doing the interview process with the people at One Nation and learning more and more about their policies and finding myself really aligning myself and feeling that they were the right party for me and that I would be really proud to stand up for them at the next election. So yeah, here I am.
Here you are. I'm so sorry about your career. There are so many Australians right now who are in a similar situation. I think in New South Wales, there's 7,000 or more school teachers who are in a similar spot that you found yourself in. And yeah, it truly breaks my heart that we've come to this point. I'm grateful that you found somewhere else so you can kind of I guess, put your time and energy into, but you know, it shouldn't be like this. And so again, I'm so sorry that you've been in this particular position. Now, I wanted to ask you about your particular electorate, so Cowper. For those who are in the area, I'm sure they know exactly what it is, but for those who aren't in that particular area, could you kind of give an idea on the size of the area, the demographic, and maybe some issues in particular that you've identified for your electorate itself?
Yeah, sure. So it goes from Port Macquarie in the south up to Coffs Harbour in the north, and then inland across to Dorrigo, basically, is the area. And it's quite a large area. You know, there's varying degrees of unemployment in our area, especially in the areas of Kempsey and Nambucca Heads. You know, I guess they're saying the country average or the state average is about 4%. Some areas of this electorate are sitting on the 4%, but look, both Kempsey and Nambucca Heads are, you know, 7.4 and 7.7% unemployment. And they have always been quite high. I think it's been made a whole lot worse with these mandates. I personally have had, you know, hundreds of people come up to me at the freedom rallies and tell me their stories. And some of them, quite a lot of them are very similar to mine in all sorts of industries. You know, they've all been stood down because of their private medical choice. But yeah, like I said, it was already an issue in this area with unemployment. So look, that's something I'm quite passionate about. I think it's not that people in this area don't want to work, it's just that there really aren't the job opportunities there. And like I said, I've really aligned myself with One Nation because, you know, a big part of their jobs policy is to encourage more apprenticeships, especially with young people. There's a subsidy program that they want to bring in where, you know, the first year as an apprentice, the employer will get a 75% subsidy. The second year, they'll get a 50% subsidy, and then the third year, 25%. So just really encouraging employers to put on some more apprentices. You know, it's the thing, like being a teacher, I would see it that so many of these young people just really struggle to get out and get a job once they finish school, especially if they're not particularly academic. They're not going to go on to study at university. They're more practical type kids who do just want to get out and do a job, do a trade, and earn a living, you know, and get going with their life. But they just are really held back because the opportunities just aren't there. And so they end up moving away to the cities, and then just the growing cost of living and everything else. They start off on a really bad note, I guess. They just really don't kick on. And, you know, after school, it's quite sad. So that's something that I think One Nation could really bring about a positive change to my area. I think, just encouraging more jobs would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a number of One Nation candidates who have expressed a similar desire with, you know, employment, and especially with trades as well, and apprenticeships and things like that. So I think, you know, unfortunately, we do see in a lot of bigger areas, kids, as soon as they've finished school, moving out, you know, having to leave to go elsewhere for it, whether it be education or whether it be employment. So yeah, I love that One Nation is sort of bringing in policies like that. Now, another policy that you've mentioned before is the increase of qualified medical professionals. Now, I'm not going to butcher your own words, so I'd love for you to kind of explain that particular policy and what you think it would do and make a difference for in your particular electorate.
Yeah, I think, you know, for a long time, regional areas have really struggled to attract professional, you know, medical staff, both doctors and nurses, and also in aged care facilities. So, you know, this One Nation policy where they'll make sure they get 3-year contracts to move to regional areas, and have also offered to pay their HECS debt, which, you know, I know when I studied engineering, that would just be amazing to be able to walk straight into a job, 3-year contract, and have your HECS debt paid for you. I think that would just be such a huge incentive to move to these more remote regional centres that do struggle to attract, you know, good, qualified and young, energetic staff, you know, at the beginning of their careers. So I think that's a really good policy, and, you know, something that would definitely benefit Cowper.
I live in a rural area of New South Wales, and when I need to see a specialist, I have to often travel hours, and then the wait lists are 6 months. So yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. I'm guessing a lot of other Australians who are in a position like myself feel exactly the same way. Now, another thing that you've sort of mentioned, and something I think Pauline Hanson and Mark Latham and a lot of the people at One Nation have been saying for a really, really long time, is about foreign interests and about selling off of Australian things to foreign interests. And I know you mentioned this to me previously to today as well, that the banning of sale of prime agricultural land is something that you felt particularly passionate about, and a policy that you'd like to sort of see through as well. So could you explain a little bit about your position on that?
Yeah, so at this stage, the statistics are that foreign interests own 14% of our agricultural land in Australia. So 14% and growing. I think this is a real concern, especially at a time where Australians are definitely recognising that we need to have be totally, well, as much as possible, self-sufficient. that we're not relying on imports from other countries. You know, we've seen this with the whole petrol oil situation at the moment, where, you know, we have a really short supply of fuel, and it is just becoming more and more expensive because we're not supplying and creating our own, you know, reserves, if you like. So, and I think the same thing potentially could happen with our food supply. I think it is just so important that we as a nation really place ourselves for a future where we can supply our own produce. We can support ourselves as a nation. We don't have to rely on imports from other countries. You know, I guess it's just such a waste of resources too, this shipping. You know, I've seen lemons from America in supermarkets. It's just ridiculous. I'm sure we could grow enough lemons here in Australia to supply each and every one of our lemon needs. You know, we should not be importing that sort of stuff because it's such a waste of resources. The shipping of food across the world, you know, it's just, it really does bother me. So I think it's wonderful that One Nation recognises this, and, you know, coming back to just land ownership, you know, keep it in Australian hands, keep it in Australian owned businesses, so that, you know, we can just really support each other and promote each other and not send all our wealth off overseas, you know, and jobs as well. You know, these, if there's more Australian owned companies here in Australia, then that's more jobs for Australians as well. You know, if we're importing things that are made from overseas, that's jobs overseas. You know, what about the jobs here in Australia? Again, we need to be just supporting ourselves and building ourselves up. You know, just slowly but surely we're giving it away.
I remember once buying a tray of mandarins from the USA, and I was like, wow, this is weird. And I didn't realize till I'd gotten home that that's where these mandarins were from. But would you say that this sort of extends as well to non-Australians purchasing properties in Australia as well?
Well, from what I'm hearing at the moment, a big part of the housing crisis we're experiencing, where the prices have gone through the roof on purchasing a house, is because of foreigners coming into Australia and paying more for our houses. So the problem is that it drives the price up, and they're snapping them up so quickly, things are really not on the market for long at all. It's just becoming more and more impossible for Australians to buy their own home here in Australia, which just breaks my heart, especially for young people trying to get into the market for the first time. You know, they don't just have $1 million sitting there. They're just starting out. You know, they don't necessarily have a big inheritance from their parents either, you know. So it's a big concern. I think there needs to be an investigation into why the prices have gone through the roof so quickly in terms of buying properties, because it's got a flow-on effect. There's this whole thing now with high rentals. You know, I've got a friend whose house rental doubled in price. I was quite shocked that they were allowed to double the rent. You know, she's a single mum with 2 kids. I argued with her. I said, I don't think they can raise it up by that much, can they? And then when I looked into the details, apparently they can, and they have. And, you know, I don't think she's the only person who's experienced this in the last 6 months to 12 months, just this, you know, huge rise in rent. And yeah, I worry because it doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, I remember our parents' generation buying houses for $30,000. Wouldn't that be nice, like, to live back then? And you look now and you can't even get just a basic fibro 3-bedroom home for under $1 million in Sydney.
And it's gone through the roof really quickly. You know, back in early 2000s, I bought a unit in Sawtell, so that's near Coffs Harbour, for $59,000. You know, that's only 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That same unit, I dare say now, would be worth 300. You know, how is that possible? How have we as a country let this happen? I worry. There needs to be more going on than what, you know, what's going on. And I think we need to ask questions.
Yeah, I worry for our kids. If it's this bad now, what's it going to be in another 15 years, 20 years when they're in a position to look for homes? Like, how can we continue to sustain this trajectory with cost of living, cost of rent, cost of mortgage? Yeah, lots of questions that we need to be asking for sure. Now, I wanted to sort of get back into particular policies, particular things that you're passionate about for your area, and obviously is quite personal to you as well, which is these mandates. And a lot of Australians kind of want to know, what are candidates, what's my vote going to achieve? And a lot of people want to see the ending of these mandates. A lot of people want to see an investigation into the handling of the pandemic as well. Are these things that you align with? What's your stance on those particular matters?
Like I said, I've had hundreds of people come up to me, and I predict it's thousands in my area who are sitting at home waiting for these mandates to be thrown out because they're ridiculous. There's shortages in every single sector, especially in health, definitely in teaching. There's classes not getting covered because there isn't enough teaching staff to take classes when teachers are off sick. So you've got students sitting out in the playground when they should be sitting in a classroom and learning. They're actually unsupervised outside while this is happening. It's not good, especially when it's happening a few times a week, and all because of these mandates that are discriminating against people for their own private medical choices. It doesn't make any sense to me, especially when anyone's catching it, anyone's spreading it. The vaccine's not stopping either of those things, so it doesn't make sense that you are stopping people from working just because they haven't had it. So I think the mandates getting thrown in the bin is a no-brainer. It doesn't make any sense. Hopefully more and more people are agreeing, especially when they're talking about boosters, or the third or the fourth or the fifth or the sixth. I don't know how many of these.
11, who knows?
And the Pfizer documents have come out. It's scary, the amount of adverse reactions that have been recorded, and these are only the ones that we know about. It's a lot, and and they're trying to impose it on children too, who most children have excellent immune systems. Why would you think that they need this experimental vaccine? But that's just one thing I'm particularly passionate about, but I think that's for all of Australia. But more locally, just to totally change the subject, the Oven Mountain is a big issue, I think, for my community. So it's on the way from Kempsey up to Armidale. So it's called the Oven Mountain Pumped Hydro Project. It's very similar to the Snowy 2 project, where they want to remove water from the Macleay River, put it in a large reservoir, and then pump it up. It gets pumped up during off-peak times, and then it gets released down through turbines to generate electricity. It's a huge amount of water. This river was dry a few years ago during the drought. So they're wanting to pump out 6 gigalitres, which, to put into perspective, is 2,400 Olympic-sized swimming pools.
Wow.
Yes. And the bottom reservoir is the size of 10 SCGs.
Right.
Quite a large eyesore. Beautiful, pristine country through there. So many national parks. It's been proposed by Alinta Energy, which is a Hong Kong company. So many locals are concerned about this, that it's not even an Australian-owned project. There's been very little community consultation. The people in the community that I've spoken to are concerned about it. I haven't heard many positives. People are really worried, again, that it's not an Australian company. We're trusting them with our water for this energy system that, Snowy Hydro 2 has not gone well from all accounts. If you research it, it's been a bit of a debacle. The budget's totally blown out, and it's really not a very efficient system. So, on the one hand, they're trying to come up with more green energy supply for the area, but I think our water security is potentially much more important. And look, it's a very sensitive area up through there too. There's lots of caves, there's traditional camping grounds with our First Nations people, and again, not very much community consultation. So I want there to be more community consultation. I want to see, is there anyone that really wants this to go ahead, or is it just something that's just being snuck through by the government while we're all very distracted with COVID-19?
Yeah, they're all very good questions that need to be asked. And again, you're right, like there's been a lot of distraction with COVID, that things are happening in the background that we might normally pay attention to that we're not anymore. So yeah, it's great that you're aware of what's happening in the background, that you can potentially be a voice for people who do have concerns. Now, you've mentioned alternative energy just then. You've mentioned green energy. Climate change is an issue that a lot of Australians are concerned about, not necessarily from that perspective, but from the perspective of how politicians are going to handle it. And so I sort of wanted to get your thoughts on climate change, dare I say coal, dare I say mining and things like that. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of people probably want to know like where you stand on those matters.
Yeah, so I worked I studied chemical engineering, and then I worked in the area of environmental monitoring before I was a teacher. So that was when I was living in Sawtell, and the company was in Coffs Harbour. So, I'm very aware of, the things that they do to help maintain our environment and, reduce pollution. And these are things that I think everyone can agree on, that we're trying to maintain the pristine beauty of our environment, and for ourselves, and also for our future, for our grandchildren, children, but also for our animals and every living thing on this earth. In terms of climate change, I think there's a lot of aspects of it that aren't getting discussed. I guess if you just watch the mainstream media and you just listen to certain political parties, it's all doom and gloom. The temperatures are rising. We need to hurry up and do something. All this burning of fossil fuels is causing the issue. These are the arguments that they say. But we don't get to see the big picture. They're not talking about the geoengineering, the things that they're doing to apparently, fix this up. The chemicals that they're using, like silver iodide, sulfate particles, calcium carbonate, microscopic C particles. So that's to do with spraying the clouds and the cloud whitening that they're doing there on the Great Barrier Reef. These are all things that I think need to form part of the conversation when we're talking about our climate, and if they think it's changing. So if you're going to talk about pollution from cars and from coal-fired power stations, let's also talk about the things that you're putting into the sky to generate rain, the cloud seeding, all the geoengineering techniques that are being used.
I think definitely what a lot of Australians want is just a conversation. It's very much similar, I guess, in a sense to the COVID narrative, in that it, like you mentioned, it's all fear-based. It's all doom and gloom. And I think, all we want is an objective, impartial discussion about everything. So I think what you mentioned is definitely conversations that we should be striving for, we should be having.
Yes.
So
and fact-based too, because even Malcolm Roberts, he has asked for empirical evidence from all areas of government, CSIRO. He just has not received it. All he's hearing is these so-called experts saying that carbon dioxide levels are rising, so therefore temperature is rising. Okay, so can you show us the facts? There's concerns. He also has voiced concerns, and I share these concerns with the integrity of the data from the Bureau of Meteorology. data has been adjusted. So there's questions surrounding that. Really, we do need to be gathering up the facts, talking about every single human activity that is going on. So, all of the burning of the hydrocarbons, all of the geoengineering, everything. And how is that impacting our climate? And also, let's look at the full picture in terms of green energy solutions. Obviously, the solar panels and the wind turbines, a lot of people have placed a lot of hope in those, but I think they haven't really been thought through. There's not a whole lot of recycling that can be done of these types of energies when they come to the end of their lifespan. Most of them are made overseas as well. So they're quite energy, they need a lot of energy to be made, and they're being made overseas. Apparently the turbine, they're ending up in landfill, 60 to 80 meters long. These blades, turbine blades, are ending up in landfill, which I find quite shocking. And again, no plan for how to deal with all these solar panels, which will be shortly coming. A lot of them will be coming to the end of their lifespan, but then they're still pushing more and more and more. They want to have all these huge solar farms, which take up many, many hectares, that could potentially do the same thing as a much smaller coal-fired power station that is using our very clean Australian coal.
I think that's the thing as well. When you look at the emissions in Australia, especially in comparison to other nations around the world, we are one of the best for clean fossil fuels, clean coal. So yeah, definitely. I feel a lot of Australians are fearful of what this climate hype and alternative energy solutions will actually mean to their everyday lives, whether this is going to be another tax or it's going to, increase cost and pricing for certain things. But what I sort of wanted to ask you about as well was the manufacturing in Australia. You mentioned it then, like even with these turbines and things, that they're sourcing them from overseas. Now, One Nation's always been about bringing the jobs to Australia, being self-sufficient here in Australia. But you've mentioned particularly even in your area how you'd like to see more manufacturing done. So if you could sort of explain that a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so, and that's the thing, if they want to be making these solar panels and using them, especially for solar hot water services, why can't they make them here in Australia? Why can't we do that so that we're, supporting an Australian business and giving Australian people more job prospects, but so many different things. Our food, I think I mentioned earlier, we should be trying to produce as much as possible our food here in Australia. So that, again, jobs, really efficient and, much better quality food that we can trust, because there's some concerns even with the food that we do get from overseas, what is the quality like? So yeah, definitely more manufacturing. I think there's potential for so many things, it all started back in 1975, I believe. So, which was actually the year I was born. So that was when Australia signed on to this Lima Declaration. And I think a lot of people don't know a whole lot about it. But at the time, it was a thing that just happened where Australia signed up to this and agreed to, have our manufacturing go offshore to other third world countries. And the justification at the time was to help build up our neighbouring countries, to help build them up. And then we would buy these goods back from them. And this includes China. So, I think it could be argued that China is no longer a third world country. They're quite a powerhouse in the whole world situation. I don't know that we should be sending all our manufacturing there. And, the argument that, wages are much more in Australia, I don't think that washes anymore either, especially when you look at how much shipping is costing now with fuel prices. I think we would be very competitive compared to other countries doing as much manufacturing here in Australia. And that's definitely something that One Nation wants to see happen.
Mm. Now, just lastly, before we sort of wrap up, I wanted to talk about pensioners because you did mention that you think they don't really get a fair go of things. They've paid tax their whole lives, yet, lacking a lot of support in financial areas. So what sort of policies would you like to see or changes would you like to see for pensioners?
Well, I know One Nation's proposing a $100 a week rise in their pension. I think that's the bare minimum that needs to happen. I feel like they just don't get the respect that they deserve at this time in their life, especially if they're renting still. I just can't imagine how they're coping, paying these inflated rents. And then with the rising fuel costs and food costs, how are our older Australians actually coping? And, I guess the last 2 years, they've been terribly isolated. They're just only just sort of getting out and about now. I guess they've probably been the ones targeted the most with the fear campaign, during all this COVID stuff, being told that they're much more vulnerable because they're older. Just some of the measures were quite bad. When they're in Melbourne, they're limiting their exercise for 1 hour a day. Surely getting out in some fresh air and getting exercise is very important to your immune system. So limiting that would not be good. So, older Australians, I worry that they are not getting a fair deal and they're not being heard. And I think it's time that they were, because they have the most experience and the most wisdom. They've seen all the changes. I dare say they've seen and witnessed firsthand the decline in our society in terms of Australian values. So I think they're the ones that we really need to be looking after and not, being stingy when it comes to their pension.
Yeah, I personally couldn't see a loved one in a nursing home for a couple of years because of the pandemic. I'm sure there are many people who have been in the same position as well. But sadly, they're seen as an inconvenience instead of a wealth of knowledge, like you mentioned, so much wisdom. They've probably seen it with their own eyes. They've been a part of it with their own hands. So, I think looking after them is certainly something a lot of Australians would agree with you on. Now, before we finish, where can people find you? And have you got a website they can go to visit, an email address? I'm sure people have a lot more questions that they maybe would want answered than I've been able to ask today. So if you could sort of direct people where to go and then maybe give indication if there's any meet and greets coming up, places where they can sort of meet you face to face.
So my email address is Cowper, COWPER, at newsouthwales.onenation.org.au. I can also be found on Facebook. So that's under Faye Aspiotis with Pauline Hanson'S One Nation. And in terms of, I'm on the One Nation website too. So you can see all of the candidates there and a little bio for each one that explains, their background and what they're passionate about and what they can do for, each community. In terms of Cowper coming up, so this Saturday I've got a afternoon tea happening at the Senior Citizens Hall in Nambucca Heads. So that starts at 2:30. And so that's for members and volunteers. So, I guess if you're a One Nation supporter, it would be great if you could come along to that. And then the following Sunday, so the 3rd of April, I'm having a free sausage sizzle down here in Kempsey at the Riverside Park, again for members and volunteers. So just wanting to come together and come up with some strategies for how we're going to hopefully, bring about some change at the next federal election. I'm getting around the place. I can be found usually just at some markets and then also in the street, just getting out and about and just trying to meet as many people as possible and talk to them about what they're concerned about for our area and how I can help them. Because I see myself more as a representative for them and less of a politician because I'm not a politician. I just want to represent them at the next federal election and then, hopefully bring about some positive change for our area.
Absolutely. And I do hope people go follow you, support you, and can really make it happen, because Australia certainly needs people like yourself on the front line representing them. So I really appreciate your time today, Faye. I really hope and pray for the future with you, and many success to you moving forward.
Great. Thanks, Evelyn.